All right. Hello and welcome to Her Theology. To all my new listeners, a warm welcome as always. And to the regulars, you're the best. I love that you're on here. Your support and encouragement really carries through. And I also need to say quickly hello to the men, because I have been meeting more and more men that have been reaching out and saying, I love your podcast. I listen to it. And that always excites me and shocks me a little bit, because I always think, Her Theology would just rule out men, but it doesn't. So to my male listeners, hello, and thank you for listening. As always, if you are new or if you're with me regularly, please like, subscribe, do whatever you can. Word of mouth is the most powerful way that this ministry can grow. So that's just by sharing it with your friends and family, church members, whatever. Sharing it on social media is also really helpful. If you want, you can follow on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram, I've been popping a few more things up there. Finally, even though I'm not a fan of social media, it has been helpful. So you can follow there on Her Theology. And lastly, YouTube is going to be up and running by the time this episode comes out. I've been slowly uploading some old episodes, and all the new ones will be up there with Nancy Wilson and Patricia Wirracoon and our guest today. So plus whatever else is going to come our way. So head on to YouTube. You can find that under Her Theology, and you can subscribe and also like that. So moving on. Intro for today. I think we can all agree we're really living in an over-sexualized society. If you struggle with that statement, then maybe perhaps there's space to consider how you've been conditioned or desensitized to it. As Christians, for me personally, it's crucial to discern and challenge the harmful notion that sexualization equates to empowerment. This misconception is really destructive, and it's destroying the entire generations. It's creating toxic messaging that really results in harmful actions and really a destruction of what a loving relationship looks like. Today, I'm hoping to address this as we have our guest on from Collective Shout, which I will introduce in a second. And she's going to walk us through what this messaging looks like, how it's kind of toxic and damaging, but also perhaps a healthier approach that we can have to relationships and self-worth. This is a really tricky topic to discuss. So as we navigate it, I'm sure there'll be some graphic or some confronting stories that may be shared. So being mindful of that today, I would suggest that if you have any little kiddies, maybe this isn't the episode to play in the background while you're cleaning or in the car. Perhaps listen to this at a time when their little ears are not around, because I don't want to not have that information in there, because I think sometimes the harsh realities is what turns us into action and advocating and for change. So keep that in the back of your mind. Before we start, I just want to say in Romans 12:2 and in Philippians 4:8, the Word of God is reminding us to not be conformed to the world and to hold on to whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. And so I just want to keep that as like a little bit of a foundation. We're not going to go into scripture or anything like or theology today. We're going to really just talk about the topic and kind of what's happening in that world. But for those of you that are listening that are Christians, I want you to remember that those verses encourage us to focus on what is good and pure, and that can guide our approach to when it comes to media and relationships and self-worth and conversations around this topic. So we just need to remember that we actually need to actively resist conforming to what the world says is right and renewing our minds according to God's will. And so as we work through that subject, just really consider that and think through that. So today I have with me, and Melinda, I didn't check how to pronounce your last name. Melinda Tankhard. Tankhard Reist. Okay, great.
I get called worse things, so if you mispronounce it.
Okay, good. I just thought, I didn't even check that. We talked about other things, not that. If you haven't heard of Melinda, she is the director of Collective Shout, which is an incredible organisation that really works to advocate and lobby against a lot of the over-sexualization images and graphics and messages that are out there. And they do that through a means of various ways. Melinda is an author, speaker, media commentator, and advocate for young people. She is best known for her work addressing sexualization, objectification, harms of pornography, and sexual exploitation, which also leads to trafficking and violence against women. Melinda is the author and editor of 7 books, which is crazy. I love hearing women that are pioneering this stuff. And she's working on number 8, Boundary Setting for Girls, covering sexualization of young people and the harms of the porn, sex industry, and violence against women and girls. Melinda has appeared on ABC's Q&A which I need to look that up because I feel like that would be so daunting being on there, and the Gruen sessions, along with many other TV and radio programs. She is co-founder and movement director of the grassroots campaign movement Collective Shout for a world free of sexual exploitation. So you can find them at collectiveshout.org. Melinda is an ambassador for World Vision Australia, Compassion Australia, Hagar, New Zealand, and the youth mentoring body, the Reist Foundation. She is also a senior lecturer in the Centre of Culture and Ethics at Notre Dame University, Sydney, and is named in the Who's Who of Australian Women and the World Who's Who of Women. So, Melinda, with all that said, thank you for your time, because I imagine it is very full days, and I appreciate being on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Well, I appreciate your interest, Cass. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So Collective Shout, let's start there. How did it start 15 years ago? Like, what did it look like back then? And what kind of amazing goals have you kicked, and what's your vision for the future?
Well, it came out of my third book, actually, Getting Real, Challenging the Sexualization of Girls. One of the contributors to that book was a young woman who was struggling with her idea of body image, the way the culture made her hate herself for not conforming to rigid stereotypes and norms about how women's bodies should look. And after the book came out, she wrote to me and said, "This book is a collective shout against the pornification of culture." And I love that expression so much. It sort of leapt out at me. And I thought, I need an excuse to use this name, Collective Shout. So I got in touch with some other women I'd done some activism with in the past. And then other women just came out of the woodwork with the same thoughts. And we met and formed the movement, grassroots activist campaigning movement, to call out advertisers, marketers, medias, corporations, any organization, any commercial body profiting from sexually exploiting the bodies of women and girls. So we have run multiple campaigns in Australia and around the country. We've had multiple victories. We play hard, we just go out there strong and call out these companies. We name names. We've got rid of porn magazines. 3 porn magazines in Australia no longer exist. Zoo, Picture and People. Picture and People were in Australia for 80 years, next to the lollies, beside the counter, corner stores, milk bars.
I remember that.
7-Elevens, petrol stations. What we did there was we put the images from those magazines, including fantasies for Australian schoolgirls, next to the names and faces of the publisher, Bauer Media Group. Within 7 weeks, they were gone. The CEO called me into his office and told me, we're not going to publish these magazines anymore. We forced the largest e-commerce platform in the world, Alibaba, to get rid of, and warning here, this is particularly graphic, but child sex abuse dolls. So these are replica, lifelike, anatomically correct children, infants, babies, custom design. 23 Chinese factories were selling these replica children and body parts on Alibaba. They're also sold on Etsy, by the way. We went after Alibaba, and within 7 weeks they were all gone. We've got billboards taken down. We've got sexualized clothing for children removed. We got every state and territory government to agree to deregister wicked campers. You might recall the wicked camper vans that had anti-women, disgusting, misogynist slogans all over them, highly sexualized, violent slogans against women. And we got every state and territory government to agree to deregister them if they didn't get rid of those slogans. So many victories. Last year we had 23 victories. This year so far we have had 6 already. And you can check out our campaigns at collectiveshout.org. But the reason we're successful is that our supporters care and take action. We work with international partners. We have an ongoing campaign against Pornhub, the biggest dispenser of misogyny, degradation, depersonalization, dehumanization of women and girls in the world. So that's just a small sample of the many campaigns that we have run. We're like first responders, We see the problem and we go out hard, and we harness social media for our campaigns. One of the quickest victories we ever had was in an hour. Some of the longest campaigns that we're still running now are 10 years, 10, 15 years. Honey Birdette, for example, a sex store
It's just
owned by
that
Playboy
is,
in our family shopping malls, just been found in breach of the advertising code of ethics for the 74th time, but
I
still
saw that.
pornified portrayals of women in the display windows, promoting, normalizing bondage, kink, visible genitals showing.
Yeah.
And our kids have to see this, and they walk through the shopping malls. There's no penalties, there's no fines for non-compliance, so the rulings are irrelevant. They are meaningless. Honey Birdette, serial offender, doesn't change. So that's a long term. So we're in it for the long haul. We keep fighting and
Yeah.
fighting and fighting
Yeah.
until we get the outcomes that we all need.
I was going to say, would your biggest enemy be Honey Birdette?
Oh,
I swear,
yeah,
I don't understand how I just don't understand. I take my children through
yeah,
there and I literally avoid that section of the shopping center because my 6-year-old
yeah.
boy will be looking at it like,
The shopping centres don't care. I mean,
oh,
they're the landlord. So we
no.
take it up
Yeah.
to Westfield, the Centre Group, Lend
Yeah.
Lease, the other property groups, because they are the landlords that host Honey
Yeah.
Birdette, and they don't require them to change. We also take it up to the superannuation investment companies, the so-called ethical investment companies, the so-called Christian investment companies that invest in the shopping centres that host Honey Birdette in violation of their own values, statement of ethics, mission, values, beliefs. So we go after them as well. You can
Good.
find the names of those investment companies on our website, and many of you listeners will be surprised to see who is there.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Honey Birdette, is it our biggest enemy? No, look, I don't think so. I would say the global porn and sex industry.
Yes, is your bigger one.
Yeah, but we'll go after all of them because they are doing demonstrable harm. The research is solid about the harms of sexually objectifying women and girls, and that does damage to us. That does damage to real women and real girls every day of their lives. And how dare you profit from doing that to women and girls, and distorting boys' ideas of women and girls as well.
This is the thing. The damage is just so far reaching.
Yes.
It's it's like a little thread that you just unravel and it just keeps on going. Maybe we can start here because I think I'm very familiar with the work that you do and I am quite passionate. I speak out a lot about over-sexualization, the damage of porn. So anyone listening to this, if you have not, you can go back and listen to I did a 3-part series on porn and the damage that has. So we spoke to a married couple, we spoke to a guy that leads a ministry in healing, and then we also spoke to a woman that struggles with porn and has worked through that process of healing. So we kind of covered the full facet. We go through a lot of the information around it. And then also I have interviews with Nancy Pearcey on how that impact, like the war on toxic war on masculinity, how that actually looks into the over-sexualization and how that has created this very toxic idea of what masculinity is that is not helpful and is rather dangerous. So you can listen to those episodes for a little bit more, I guess, context. But perhaps, Melinda, if you can go through with us what over-sexualization children looks like and the contributing factors, and I guess, give us a bit of groundwork, a foundation for our listeners.
Sure. Well, in terms of children and the way they are sexualized and exposed to explicit sexual messaging and images, this is happening from very early ages. So we have on our Collective Shout website a page called Kids Exposed, where parents can send in their stories. And it's just diabolical, little kids being exposed to rape porn, sadism porn, torture porn, incest at the click of a button. Now, I've been in this space for a long time. I wrote Big Porn Inc., Exposing the Harms of the Global Porn Industry. I've got, this book. This is my newer book, He Chose Porn Over Me, Women Harmed by Men Who Use Porn. So I hear terrible stories all the time, but I can tell you the stories are getting worse, and they're getting worse younger. And the stories that I heard last year are the worst stories I've ever heard, in my life, and that's saying something. And so I'm in schools most days, and girls are telling me, even girls in primary school, even in Christian schools, telling me Boys are touching them, groping them, trying to choke them, trying to strangle them, calling them their sex slaves, moaning, sexually groaning and grunting and moaning at girls, threatening them with rape if they don't send nudes. Now, this is all conditioning from pornography. Pornography is the biggest sex educator of our children. It is the biggest department of education in the world for our children. And parents can't compete. We cannot compete with this multi-billion-dollar industry, which is grooming our children. And of course, children also get these porn-themed ideas from mainstream popular culture, from movies, from social media, from toys and games, video games, which are just rife with porn and violence. Children are being exposed to these pornographic ideas and themes and images, even when they're not looking. So we are told stories of children searching for their favorite cartoon character, and they're led to a porn site because the porn industry has created entire porn sites based on children's most popular cartoon characters. So even Shrek, My Little Pony, Dorothy the Dinosaur, Atomic Betty, these cartoons have designated porn sites. So the child can be searching for a cartoon character and end up on a porn site. Children are being exposed to porn through their chats on their game sites. They're being exposed to it through other kids at school. So a new trend I heard this year was boys airdropping porn to any child on a school bus, any child getting airdropped porn. Again, these children weren't looking. So, what hope is there for our children to not be exposed to this harmful content, which is distorting and shaping them in harmful ways? And the research on this is solid. When I first started out on this issue more than a decade ago, I was considered weird and prudish, hung up about sex, and made fun of, mocked, derided every day. Now, everything that I was saying is now in our National Plan of Action to Address Violence Against Women.
Wow.
Our watch has a report on young people, porn and violence. It's acknowledged by the UK Children's Commissioner. There's so much research now on this. So our children are targets, they're victims of a predatory industry which is grooming them. And so now we see even little girls strutting and preening on TikTok, showing off their little bodies. We have a choking challenge on TikTok where children strangle each other. This is all genres of pornography. We have even mothers and their children doing TikTok dances to violent porn-themed music, including a very popular song at the moment in which women are strangled and choked and murdered.
I've heard. I saw.
Right, we posted on this. And so you see these videos of even mothers doing this with their children. So that's a very long answer, Kaz. I'm sorry, because there's so many.
No.
There's so many expressions of this. There's so many manifestations of the way our children are sexualized. We see it in the way that predators try to reach our children on their social media platforms. We see it in the way that Instagram, for example, allows thousands and thousands of male predators to engage with underage girls. We see it in the production of artificial intelligence, and that's being harnessed now to create child sexual exploitation material, often based on real children. So we've got to be careful not to think that artificial intelligence sounds like it's sort of fake and distant and removed. Often they're using images of real children to generate the pornographic images. So yes, a long answer, obviously. That's how it's affecting our children. We're seeing a rise of child-on-child sexual abuse at rates never before seen in history.
Yeah, this one shocked me when I read one of your articles. I had no idea about this, and maybe you can expand a bit on that.
Children are mimics, and they're imitating what they see with other children. Sorry, they're imitating what they see in pornography. They're acting that out on other children. We now have a situation again, never seen before, where adolescent Australian males are now not only the largest cohort of sex offenders in this country, 15 to 19-year-old boys, the largest cohort of sex offenders according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but also now the largest offenders against children Males 18 and under are now committing more offences against children than any other group of people. Right? This is what it's come to.
That's
It's an
horrifying.
absolute
Absolutely
disaster.
horrifying.
That's the reality.
Yeah. And we can't talk about it enough, to be really honest. I mean, clearly I think I've got my feet in this world and I kind of understand what's going to be following for a little while, but like it's still a shock to me who's familiar. So those of you that are not familiar, you know, you cannot look into this enough. You can't really stop looking into it and staying up to date on it, because this is this is a harsh reality that we actually have to talk about. And the more we bring it out to the air and bring it out to the light, the more we can actually see change.
Yes.
I mean, I remember reading a stat, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. Maybe you can clarify, but it was saying that over 80% of porn is aggressive towards women. That might even be higher now. That was probably about a year or two.
Of most popular porn titles feature violence against women, and the bulk of that violence is directed towards women. So 87%. So the most popular genres of porn are the most violent. That's what our kids are being exposed to. And to illustrate the severity of this, a teacher last year told me this story. She said she overheard two 12-year-old boys discussing sex. And one boy asked the second boy, "How do you know when you're having sex?" And the second boy replied, "When she starts to cry." You see, this is what we have taught our boys. This is how we have socialized them to think of girls and sex. She should be in agony. She should be in pain. She should have mascara running down her face. That's how you know you're having sex. We have failed our children. It's not their fault. We have done this to them, and now 12-year-old boys think that it would be normal for a girl to be in pain, and that's what sex looks like. So we've set them up for failure. There is no way they will be able to sustain healthy relationships, you know, family life, kids. There's no way. They can't. It's just impossible for them to have healthy, loving relationships, because they just see girls as porn props, as they've been raised in a way that is hostile, callous towards women and girls. And porn is the teacher here. Porn is the one that's raising them to have harmful, hostile, cruel, entitled attitudes towards women and girls.
And you can see how broken it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's not how it's meant to be. You know, as a Christian woman, I read scriptures and I go, God designated sex to be this beautiful process that takes place to bring a husband and wife together. And it's in a loving, respectful, honorable, mutual relationship, which porn is just telling you the direct opposite. It's so devastating. And what is it telling girls? You know, what's the message it's telling these young girls, even 5 and 6, that are growing up? It's devastating. I'm curious so we know, like from what you're sharing, we know how harmful and violent the message of porn is. But how is that trickling, and where do we see that trickling? Like the message of porn, where do we see that trickling through media, Hollywood, you know, music industry? Like, how do we see its little tentacles going through world and society, and how prevalent is it, I guess?
Well, it's everywhere you look, isn't it? It's everywhere. It's everywhere through every facet of mainstream popular culture. You know, there's just no escape from it. I mean, look at the you know, I won't say the full title, but the WAP song of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. Like, that's just pure porn, suggesting that women want to be treated in these, you know, grotesque and disgusting ways. And then you have little girls in kindergarten singing these songs. Right? They're absorbing very early this idea that they exist for male sexual pleasure, that they have to be hot. If they're not hot, they're irrelevant. So we see a rise of eating disorders, self-harm, depression, anxiety, body image issues, because they can't compete with the kind of women that the boys in their lives are seeing in porn. So boys are judging them against what they see in porn. And girls feel this pressure. I mean, young girls now think they need to sign up to OnlyFans and, you know, make money for their bodies, because only their bodies count, nothing else about them, not their gifts, talents, abilities, desire to make a difference in the world, to be a loving friend, for their art, their poetry, their spirituality. These things don't count. It's all about lookism and sexual attractiveness, and that's the message they get everywhere. From the clothes, the billboards, the shop front windows, the music they listen to, social media. The research on this is interesting too. The latest research says that girls only need to spend 10 minutes on Instagram for their mood to go down. Only 10 minutes, that's all it takes. Because again, they're seeing these idealized representations of women, and they can't compete with that. And they're often sexualized representations as well. So the data tracks the decline in mood after just minutes on these platforms. Again, where's the alternative? What else are they being offered that isn't damaging to their sense of self, well-being, mental health, emotional, spiritual, social health?
OnlyFans is an interesting one with this because it's so new and it is so huge. And it's fascinating to me how it's so attractive to so many women, and some like men, obviously, as viewers largely, but I know there are some men on there as well. But yeah, maybe you could explain what OnlyFans is to our listeners, because I have a feeling
it's
some
just
may
another
not
porn
know.
platform, really. It's a subscription only, and girls are told that you'll make lots of money easily. You will meet lots of interesting men. You'll get to go to really cool parties and end up on yachts. Most women don't make that much money on OnlyFans, but it's promoted through the mainstream. We did a report on this called Side Hustles and Sexual Exploitation. You can find it on our website. But, it would be really interesting for you, Cass, to talk to a young woman called Victoria Sinnis, who heard me speak recently and then left that industry. So she was working in an OnlyFans recruitment agency, and she would trawl through the social media feeds of girls, especially girls that look young, and pitch to them, offer them a pitch. I can help you make more money. You look really hot. We love your look. Why don't you come over to, we can help you make it big on OnlyFans. She's written about her experience as a recruiter on our website, collectiveshout.org. You can find her article. And she happened to turn up to a talk I was giving, and left the agency 5 days later, and is now speaking in schools, doing podcasts around the world. She's really hit the ground running because she gives an insider's account, and she's warning girls, and she's trying to make up for what she did. She feels like she was a pimp. She was recruiting girls, she was emotionally manipulating them, and then she feels like she was profiting from them selling their bodies to OnlyFans subscribers. So she tells the truth about that industry and what was required of the girls to compete in that industry, and how they might just start off doing, just sort of average stuff, and then had to do harder and harder core content to compete and to make any money. But it's just another porn hosting platform is what it is.
Yeah. So how does this speak? Like, what warnings do you have about Instagram? Because not just Instagram, sorry, TikTok, all social media, I should say. What warnings do you have for parents, and not even just parents? I just want to be mindful here. It's not just parents listening to this. I hope it's like youth leaders and people that are raising the next generation. Everyone needs to know this. So,
the fact is, if kids are on social media, they'll be preyed on. It's as simple as that. We've described Instagram as a predator's playground. During the first year of COVID lockdown, children sharing explicit pictures with strangers went up by 360%. Children.
What?
Even
crazy.
5 years old. And so the predators know where children are. They know how to find them. They know how to talk to them. They know how to pretend to be a child the same age as that child. It's pure grooming, and you need to be across it. The kids are running rings around us in terms of their knowledge of social media. It is best to delay as long as you possibly can. Every year of delay means more cognitive development, more maturity, more understanding of risks, and more opportunity to do other life-giving activities. that don't revolve around the
Absolutely.
screen. You know, Jonathan Haidt has just put out a new book on called, I think it's called The Anxious Generation. And he has tracked the data on the increased use of screens and the declining mental health of an entire generation of adolescents. And there's good advice in there on what you can do to get your kids doing other things. There's another book I promote here in Australia by Daniel C., who's in Tasmania, and it's called
I'm
Raising
writing
Tech
these
Healthy
down.
Humans. It's very practical on how to get your kids doing other activities, how to get them outside, how to do healthy activities with your family and friends, because the screens are really harming our children. Any teacher will tell you they can't focus, they can't concentrate. They need
Absolutely.
that instant hit, that instant gratification. They can't, read a book, and it's absorbing their lives. Now, I'm not totally a critic. I use social media. I run global campaigns through social media with Collective Shout. We harness what's good about it. But for our kids, they weren't meant to be on screens day and night, and they will be harmed. They will be harmed.
I couldn't
So
agree
get
more. We
across, the platforms. Have a look at sites like Bark, B-A-R-K, B-A-R-K Technologies. Have a look at Common Sense Media. Have a look at resources through Culture Reframed, Cyber Safety Solutions, a cyber cop, Susan McLean, and we have free resources on our website as well at Collective Shout.
yeah.
And you have to know what's going on. Some kids have like 1,000 friends on their social media. It's like, you haven't been alive that long. You can't possibly have
There's no
1,000
way.
friends.
Yeah.
And they think they're very trusting. I've talked to children that met up with a kid their age at the park and discovered it was a 70-year-old man. We're seeing a rise of sextortion of boys. 1,000 reports to eSafety last year of sextortion just involving boys, where they were scammed. They thought they were talking to a girl their age. Girl sends them a sexy picture, asks for a picture of him. He sends a picture, and they discover it's a whole Nigerian scam outfit, run by men, tricking these boys, sending AI-produced images of girls. And recently, an Australian boy took his life over this. So you got to know what's going on. And we wouldn't put our kids behind a closed door with a pile of porn magazines. But if you are putting your kid behind a closed door, letting them behind a closed door with an internet-enabled device full of porn, billions of images, full of predators,
Billions.
it is inevitable. So we have to have these conversations. We have to have them younger, sadly. I also have a book that I recommend called How to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. Easy to read, accessible. You can find it on my website. How to have this difficult conversation that we wish we didn't have to have, but we really have no choice.
Yeah. I can't emphasize that enough. And I think some people get a little bit, oh, we don't want to be extremists, etc. I actually think you have to be extreme in this situation. I don't think parents and caregivers and those that are leading the youth could be extreme enough.
Correct.
We have a hard line. We have 0 screens in our house. Our children are still very young, but they'll be taught responsibility, and we'll have all the hardware, the programs and things in place when they are eventually allowed things.
Yep.
But the damages of screen time, let alone then the fact that they access porn, I cannot stress this enough. You must be extreme. It is your responsibility to raise your children and protect them. You do not have an excuse. You cannot stick your head in the sand and say, I didn't know.
I don't even think it should be seen as extreme. I think it should just be seen as responsible parenting.
Absolutely.
One day parents will, they will wish they'd done the same thing that you're doing now.
Yeah.
I had a school principal tell me a story that I found quite profound. He said that at their school, it was a state school in New South Wales, they decided to get it's a magnetic locking pouch that the kids had to put their phone in at the start of the day, and they couldn't get it till the end of the day. They literally could not get into this pouch.
Good.
He said they noticed 3 things: less bullying, less vandalism, and for the first time in years, playground noise. He said the kids started to play, and they hadn't played for years because during lunchtime and recess, they were all on their phones. And he said this, the sound of playground noise, it was like this new bird song,
It's
I
beautiful.
thought that was really
That's
profound.
what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people don't consider, is that in allowing screen
Mm,
time and allowing access to the
mm,
internet, YouTube, social media accounts, whatever it may be, and I'm talking all the different
mm.
ages, you're actually robbing your
Yes,
children from the beautiful joy that is a child being bored and learning how to play.
correct.
This is why we don't have a TV. We've never had a TV, because I'm like, my
Mm,
children need to learn to be bored so they can
mm,
play. And I see this, it doesn't matter on the age gaps, and gaming is so dangerous. I can't tell you how many friends
yes,
have disclosed where their kids have been talking to total
yeah,
weirdos and seeing horrific images
yes,
and just even not even necessarily porn, just violent stuff. So I'm just saying all this to back you up, to also
yes,
say you have to be that
yes.
person
You do
that
have to
just
be that
completely
person,
locks it
and you
down.
will feel like a pariah, and you will be mocked and made fun of and derided and called old-fashioned. But I can tell you, your kids will thank you in the future, even if they don't yet.
Absolutely.
And other
Yeah.
parents will wish they wish they'd done the same
Yeah.
thing. It's very hard for
Yeah.
parents to take a stand. Very, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But I certainly admire the ones that do.
Yeah.
Mm,
And so I guess that leads us to our next
mm,
question. What's your advice to parents, youth leaders,
mm.
whoever it may be that has an influence in a child's
Yes,
life, that takes this
yes,
seriously? And I think, like I said, I am not limiting this to parents. I think anyone that is an influence in another child's life should be speaking into this. How do
absolutely.
we create this dialogue?
Mm,
Like, how do you have these
mm.
conversations? I mean, obviously there's age appropriate levels, but yeah, what would be your advice
Yeah,
for
well,
us?
we need to act personally, we need to act collectively. So personally, what are we modeling in the home? The family is the primary educator, the first educator. What are we
Mm,
modeling at home? What do we allow in the house? It amazes me how many Christian families I meet who let their children play Grand Theft Auto, and they say, "Oh, it's just a car game. He likes cars." Well, Grand Theft Auto uh, features,
in the title.
for example, uh, there's scenes where a man buys a woman to use her for sex and then murders her to get his money back. And the player is given the options of running her over, setting her on fire, stabbing her, shooting her, and you get to choose which weapon you want to use to kill her.
Oh my
And
word.
when I meet, parents of primary school boys that think this is just about a car game again, get with the program. What are we allowing in the
Mm,
house? Do we allow the violent video games? Do we allow the sexist, racist music? Do we allow boys to speak badly about sisters and to make
mm,
comments about their bodies? How does mum and dad relate, to each other? It's not always what we say; it's how we act, how we relate, that our kids see. So, do we have every possible internet filter and blocker? Are we across parental controls? Do we have limits on screen time? What are we modeling ourselves? Sometimes we can be telling our kids they're spending too much time on the screens. And I know for me, I'm on this thing all the time and I'm
yeah.
trying to get some
Yep.
control back myself. So it's not really just about our kids, but what do we model? Because I'll see what we do, you know.
Yeah.
And then what are we
Absolutely.
doing collectively and politically? Like, why, uh, you know, we need that collective voice. It's too hard for individual parents on their own. The big tech companies are controlling our children, controlling our children's lives. They don't want any limits. They don't want any restrictions. In Australia, we don't even
Mm,
have age verification. So this would be one obstacle in the way of our kids accessing rape porn, torture porn, sadism, incest, and bestiality. It's being rolled out in other countries, but the Australian government has refused to even do a trial in Australia, even though it was recommended by the e-safety commissioner. They won't even trial it, which means there is
why?
not any block, nothing to protect our children seeing porn. Why indeed is the question we have asked the federal Labor government. Now, we are going to be making this an election issue. We'd love the support of your listeners to join with us, and we'll tell you which candidates support age verification and which ones don't.
Good. Thank you.
So that's watch this space. We've been campaigning on this for a long time, and we'd finally got somewhere when a parliamentary inquiry recommended what we wanted, system of age verification. But unfortunately, with the change of government, the new government announced that it would not even run a test, a pilot program, despite all the evidence. of what porn is doing to our children. So that's not good enough, and we're fighting to overturn that decision. And this is why we need the voice of parents and caregivers, anyone that cares about young people, to join us in this particular fight.
Absolutely. So maybe to wrap us up, you could actually explain how do people join you? Like, how do they advocate if they find something that they think
Yeah, for
needs to
sure.
change? How do they go
Well,
about
I'd love
that?
to
What
do
do they
that,
do?
but actually, I want to mention one more thing before I do.
Oh,
Obviously, we're
absolutely.
talking about the impact on kids, and that's vitally important. They're the most vulnerable. But you mentioned youth leaders, and you mentioned churches and pastors. This book contains 25 stories of women harmed by compulsive porn using partners. It includes the stories of Christian women, and it has a whole resource section on help, support, podcasts, recovery, red flags, how to know what the red flags are, when to leave, and all of this. And I want to recommend this because sadly, a lot of faith-based communities are not equipped to deal with this. And tragically,
I
I hear
couldn't agree
too
more.
often women being told to stay in these relationships, save the marriage,
Yeah.
all of this, and he's just continuing on his merry way, consuming porn day and night, even watching in front of the children, makes no attempts to change. She stays in, sometimes for years and years and years and years, to the total cost of herself. And I find
And her
too often
children.
that women tell me they don't always get good advice, sadly, in their faith communities. So I'd like to just mention that book as well, because we know porn is rife in the church as well, and it needs to be dealt with there also.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because the more we talk about it, and that's, again, I'm going to point you to the other 3 episodes I talked about this. We talk about it extensively. Church, the first episode is all about the church must speak up on this matter. We need to start addressing it. Over 60% of the users are, like, of leadership admitted to it in a US study. So it's prevalent and it's evasive, and it is in the church. And we pray for revivals in the church, and yet we don't deal with this hidden sin. It's crazy. So we need to address it. I agree with you there.
Absolutely. So joining up, collectiveshout.org, it's free to join. You'll receive our e-news. You'll find out what's going on in your community, how to take action, very practical. We won't spam you. We just tell you what's important and the actions that you can take. Collectiveshout.org is the website. You can follow me on my website as well, melindatankhardreist.com, and Collective Shout's on all the socials. I'm on all the socials as well.
Yeah, great.
So we'd love to have you. Everyone that signs up is just one more voice adding to the strength of our movement. We're a non-profit. We struggle financially. We're a tiny little team. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us.
Yep.
And we
I'm
are really
familiar with the
small.
small
There's actually
inches.
5 of us now. We're really tiny. We punch above our weight. Tax deductible, if you'd like to help us with fundraising, particularly in the lead up to our election campaign for next year.
Yep.
And we'd love you to support our campaign, sign our petitions, share them with your friends. Just take action in any possible way that you can. We really need your support.
Great. And can people come to you if they've seen something and they want to see it addressed?
They certainly
Could
can.
they come to you for advice?
We'll tell you how to do that. We'll tell you the best way of doing that, whether it's reporting to Ad Standards or the Classification Board or direct to the company. We get a lot of requests to run campaigns. We literally cannot run them all, but we triage them and we'll work out, okay, which one can we run right now? Which one has a good chance of winning? But yeah, let us know and we'll help you to take action.
Okay, great. Well, Melinda, thank you so much. I will link in the episode notes your website, but also a lot of the resources you mentioned, so that way everyone can have an easy access to that. Thank you so much for your time, Melinda. I really appreciate it. And to all the listeners, if you have found this helpful, like I said, share it, like it, subscribe. The more we can get this message out, the better. Clearly, we've only skimmed the surface, so you can find more at collectiveshout.org. And in the meantime, I hope you have a great week, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cass. Really, really appreciate your support and your interest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.